Hi there, everyone, and welcome once again to the Train Aid HQ. My name is Nick, and in today's video, we are going to be looking at vocational assessments for the CAVA course. So the purpose of this video is a talk through guides on one of our vocational assessments. This is Vocational 1, and we are going to be talking through each stage of the CAVA vocational assessments, give you lots of help and advice on how to structure your very own vocational assessments here. Now, once again, if you haven't already done so, please do like the video and subscribe to the channel to receive the latest alerts and updates from the team. Now, many people do ask us, they say, Nick, what is the difference between vocational and also workplace assessments? It's very easy. Vocational assessments are taking place within a training or a simulated environment. This is where you're assessing the learner's knowledge of the subject, whereas workplace, you're seeing them within their day-to-day working role, looking at their skills, so how they interact with customers. So we are going to be looking at vocational number 1. Okay, so here at Train Aid, we deliver a range of first aid courses. So that is going to be the topic of my vocational assessment. Now, what I'd like for you to do first, if you're on section 1, is to please fill out the front sheet. You have the candidate assessor details. That is you who is undertaking the course, and also the assessment and learner details. This is the person you're conducting your assessments on. As you can see, I have written my name, the course location, so the format of your course, whether it's online, webinar or classroom, and also the course start date. So please write that in first of all. Now, the assessment details, this is the person who's going to be your learner. And when I say learner, this can be, a fully qualified colleague, it could be a manager, it could be an apprentice, it could be someone who's undertaking a qualification. That is a learner. So they could once again be fully qualified or new to your workplace. So I've written in Tom, who's going to be my colleague, the location, so where the assessment will take place, Train Aid HQ, and also Vocational 1 as well. Okay. If we scroll down to section 2, as we can see, we have the initial assessment section. Now, this section is where we're going to provide the reader with lots of information about the learner. So what do they do in terms of their position, how their experience they are in terms of their job role here. So as we can see, we have a variety of different questions looking at the learner in greater detail and also the environment as well. You also need to include the qualification or criteria that the learner will be assessed for. So please include any standards that you are going to be using. So as we know, for an assessment to take place, you need to use some type of standards or criteria in order to make a judgment on your learner's performance. So by using a set of rules, a set of standards or criteria, then this is going to be fantastic in terms of your assessments. So in terms of my example, okay, I'm going to be focused on a CPR practical, and I am going to be using the first aid at work criteria. These set of standards are going to be a fantastic benchmark for using when I observe my colleague Tom demonstrate his CPR skills on a mannequin. Okay, so in terms of the initial assessment form, there are some other questions that look at whether or not the learner needs any type of support, any reasonable adjustments. So if the learner does require extra time, a reader, a scribe, that's absolutely fine. Please do write that down and make those reasonable adjustments as well. That's absolutely fine to include as well. Now, one of the key questions is, will there be a qualified assessor present at the time of the assessment? If yes, then please do write their name. But as we know, within our CAVA course, one of the 8 assessments will need to be observed by a qualified assessor. This is usually the final assessment. If a qualified assessor is not present, then please write no assessor present or NA as well. We also have the learner confirmation here. Now, this needs to be signed by the learner who is undertaking the assessment to say that yes, they're happy with the assessment taking place. So as we can see, Tom is very happy for the assessment to take place. We have a signature and the date as well. So this section is to be signed by the learner undertaking the assessment there. Section 3 is the assessment plan, and this provides the reader with lots of details and information about the upcoming assessment. As you can see, we have the different sections. We have the date, so the planned activity, the time as well, how long the assessment will take place, the location, so where the assessment will take place, the planned activity, pre-assessment targets as well. So in terms of the dates, location, well, this is taking place within TrainAid headquarters within one of our training rooms. The planned activity is I will be observing my colleague Tom, who's a first aid trainer, performing CPR on a mannequin, so demonstrating his CPR skills to myself. So when he goes out and teaches first aid courses to our customers, he is fully competent and confident as well. As you can see here, I've listed the criteria that I will be using to make a judgment call on Tom's performance, and these criteria they have been taken from my first aid handbook. So for your own assessment, you could include your assessment details there. Okay, so it highlights exactly what you will be judging your colleague on, for example. We also have some further information about the actual assessment as well. So I will be observing Tom perform CPR, okay, to be able to demonstrate several cycles effectively, confidently. And I will also ask some questions to Tom just to demonstrate his knowledge of CPR. On the right-hand side of the form, we have pre-assessment targets. So have you set your learner any targets prior to this assessment? So how can the learner prepare for this assessment? So it's very important that we do give our learner some pre-assessment targets. This could be perhaps pre-reading, it could be watching a video. And so this is going to prepare them fully for their upcoming assessment. You could perhaps give your learner perhaps a week's notice, and they can obviously do some homework and reading to prepare themselves for an assessment. Even reading perhaps a staff handbook is going to obviously put them in a good frame of mind for the upcoming assessment. So my advice to Tom is please do read the CPR section on the First Aid at Work handbook, and that's going to help him prepare for the upcoming assessment. Just moving on, we have obviously the sign-off page here. So once again, we require for you and your learner to sign and date this form to make sure that they're fully happy with the planned assessment and the pre-reading targets as well. And once again, any special requirements, any reasonable adjustments, please do note those in. For vocational 1, it's an observation, which is a simulation and question. So please leave that section as it is there. Now, we're just going to move on to criteria section number 4. This is the criteria or standards. So please include the standards, the specification, or the criteria to be assessed with the plan. Now, for this section, once again, you need to include evidence of your standards or criteria. Now, this standards or criteria, this is a term that that everyone has within their job role. Okay, to perform your job effectively, then you need to obviously follow some type of guidelines or standards or criteria, and that's what this section is all about. So you need to find out what assessment criteria or standards that you are going to be using. Now, this can be found perhaps on an awarding body website within a company handbook. It could be any company procedure or policy. So you can find that. Okay. If you don't have any standards or criteria, perhaps if you have, you run your own company or you deliver your very own bespoke course, then you could include your own standards and criteria. Now, my advice is to include 1 to 2 pages of the standards or criteria. You could include photos if you wish. And I would also recommend that your standards and criteria should be numbered or lettered, and this is going to help the observation stage as well. So let's just have a look at the criteria for the CPR practical. As you can see there, we have the company logo, the FAIB. We have the 2 standards of 4.1 and 4.2. And it's only 2 standards here, but it's to recognize the need to commence CPR and also how to demonstrate CPR as well. So it provides me with some information on what I should be looking for as the assessor. Once again, this page has been taken from the first aid handbook as well. So this is going to be really, really useful for creating my own assessment here. So I've just taken that single page there. You may wish to do the same, or you could submit perhaps a handbook if you wish. Okay, so these are my standards for observing Tom with. So once you have your standards, then you're ready to go with your assessment. So section 5 is the observation assessment report. So please observe the learner within their working or their day-to-day role, but within a vocational setting. Please remember to map the learner's performance to the standards and criteria, and once again to remain objective during the observation, and please do write about what you observe. So regardless of how the learner performs, you need to write what you see and try to map what you see against your criteria. Just a few things before we look into the observation report. Please do include the learner name, the candidate name, the date, the location, the assessment methods to be used, the observation, and also the evidence reference as well. So as we can see here, we have the observation report on the left-hand side. This is where I'll have a clipboard and pen, and I will write down my notes on what I saw from the observation. On the right-hand side, we have the evidence reference as well. So once again, please do map what you are observing to your criteria. So as we can see here, you are going to be observing that your learner against a set of standards or criteria. So that's very important that you do that as well. Okay. You can, of course, keep your observation notes quite brief when you're observing, because when you observe a learner, that's the main part. You can write up your notes afterwards as well, but the main thing is that you are observing to make sure that the learner is demonstrating the correct technique. So just a few comments here. Tom was instructed that primary survey was already completed and the casualty was not breathing. This maps to criteria 4.1, and Tom asked for an ambulance to be called and for them to be advised the casualty is not breathing and to arrive as quickly as possible. So once again, it maps to the standards of 4.1. Now, your criteria, your own assessment will be, of course, bespoke to your standards and criteria. So it will differ slightly. Okay, so this is obviously a first aid example. Yours will be different based on your industry as well. Now, after the observation, we would like for you to ask perhaps 5 to 6 questions to really find out about the learner's knowledge. So once they perform their skill, okay, take them to one side and you are going to ask them a series of questions relevant to the actual assessment as well. So as we can see here, we've got a range of questions. So question 1 is what depth should the compression be for CPR? Question 2 is what rate, speed should the compression be performed? Now, it's very important that you do map your questions to the criteria. So we're not asking questions which are off topic. They have to be mapped. They have to be relevant to your standards. They have to be relevant to your assessment. Otherwise, this is going to confuse the learner. And we don't want that to happen. We don't want to confuse our learner. Okay. So the questions should be quite simple. They should be quite straightforward. And it's very important that you write down the learner's response as well. So even if they get a question wrong, you're still going to write down their response, because you can mark obviously the answers to the questions after this stage as well. But try to aim for 5 to 6 questions, and this is going to be relevant to your actual assessment as well. Section 7, just moving on to photographic evidence. Please do aim to include 5 to 6 photos from the assessment. You do not need to include the face of the learner. So perhaps if you work in an area which is sensitive, okay, you can, if you want to, blank out the learner's face. You could take photos of the back of the learner's face. You could even take photos of the assessment environment, but try to include 5 to 6 photos here. As you can see, we have a range of photos from this assessment, which have been mapped A to F. And we've provided a description of each of the photos as well, from the very start of the primary survey, okay, to commencing CPR, all the way to photo F, which is checking for signs of recovery there. Okay, you might obviously need to take photos on your phone, copy and paste onto this form as well. Once you've completed this section, what we would like for you to do is for you to sign the form as a candidate assessor, and also ask for your learner to sign this form as well and put a date on there as well. Okay, now after the questions have been complete, it's time for you to give your feedback to the learner. So number 8, okay, section 8 is the post-assessment feedback, and this should be provided in a private setting away from the noisy assessment environment, and make sure it's one-to-one. It's between you and the learner. Okay, so please ensure the environment is away from any noise or distractions. So step 1 is the learner assessment feedback. The person you are assessing, ask the learner how they thought the assessment went, first of all. So we're not telling them the results straight away. We're saying to the learner, how did you think the assessment went for you? And ask the learner, you know, their thoughts. How did it go? Okay, did they have enough time to prepare for the assessments? Were they comfortable within the assessment environment? So as we can see here, we have Tom's response. Okay. And he's going to give us feedback on how he thought he performed within the assessment and how the assessment went for him. Was he fully prepared? Was he comfortable? Was he given enough time to prepare for the assessment? So first of all is to get the feedback from the learner. Step 2, this is a candidate's assessor feedback to the learner. This is letting the learner know, did they pass? What were their strengths, and also what are their areas for development as well. So this is where we're letting the learner know straight away, very well done, you passed your assessment, or unfortunately you did not pass the assessment today. These are your reasons why you did not pass the assessment. Once again, it's okay to fail a learner. It's okay if you feel that they could perhaps complete the assessment. That's okay to do. But let them know their results. Let them know if it's a pass or a reassessment. Let them know their strengths and, of course, any areas for development as well. So this is step 2, the candidate assessor feedback to the learner. Okay. And the final step, okay, the final section is the action plan. and assessment sign-off. So please provide the learner with some targets to take forward towards their next assessments. This could be for the learner to attend a future CPD course. It could be to shadow perhaps another trainer or assessor, or perhaps another colleague as well. It could even be a small target, such as reading a staff handbook or a specification to improve their knowledge of the subject. So as we can see here, with my target for Tom is I will observe him on one of our first aid courses in the future, and for him to read the latest updates of the first aid industry handbook as well. Okay, once again, we would also like for you to get your learner to sign and date the assessment form, and please, you need to do that as well as the candidate assessor. Once again, if a qualified assessor is present, then please ask them to sign, or you can leave this box blank. Okay, so hopefully you found vocational assessment 1 video, the talk through guide, useful. Once again, please do like the video and subscribe to the channel to receive the latest alerts and updates from the team. Okay, bye for now.